Today's episode comes to you in partnership with RotaCloud, the people management platform for shift-based teams. RotaCloud lets managers create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage annual leave, all from a single web-based app. It also makes work simple for your team, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, straight from their phones. Try RotaCloud's time-saving tools today by heading to rotacloud.com/Phil. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is total industry legend Robin Hutson, chairman of Homegrown Hotels. Coming up on today's show, Robin reveals his secret to success.
I didn't do any work, but I had a load of fun.
Phil describes his dream job. Chop up a bucket full of button mushrooms and turn them into roses using a cleaver. And Robin tells us it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows on the upward trajectory.
And then we couldn't afford a night porter, so one of us would sleep on the sofa in the lounge and keep an eye on the place overnight.
All that and so much more as we chat through Robin's quite amazing and legendary career so far. Where to begin with today's chat? Integrity is a running theme throughout, but for anyone listening intent on building yourself an extraordinary career, then listen hard as there's so many insights into what it takes to reach the top. A massive thank you to Robin for his time. One final thing before we get into it, and I know I go on about this, but if you can take 2 seconds to subscribe to the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, it really makes a huge difference. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to hotel legend Robin Hutson. Hi Robin, how are you?
Good morning, Phil. Yeah, all good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sitting here at home in Winchester at the moment. So
very nice. I was going to ask you, it does look like a very nice grand room that you're in.
Well, I don't know. It's quite a small room, actually.
Is it? You've got the good angle then. You should be you should go into estate agency.
It actually looks a bit wonky from here. I was trying to find decent signal in my house, and my Mac is now perched on the side of an armchair, so I hope it's not too jaunty for you.
Very good. No, all good. Yeah, so how's life? What are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, life is good, thank you. And we're still having a lot of fun with the pigs.
So, for anybody who doesn't know what the pig is, you should probably clarify.
Yeah.
Just that you don't have a herd of pigs out in the.
Well, we do have herds of pigs as well. To be absolutely honest, but no, the pig is our small boutique hotel brand. They're rural hotels spread across the southern counties of England. We have a pig in every county from Cornwall to Kent, and they're essentially. They're kind of restaurants with rooms in a way, albeit with 30-odd rooms in each location. But we major on the kitchen garden, and we try to grow as much food as we can. And what we can't grow, we're religious about sourcing from within 25 miles. So yeah, and we founded the pig in 2011. So we're 13 years in, albeit that we had a couple of dodgy years in between, but 13 years in, 8 hotels, and 2 more in the pipeline actually. So we're going well despite the challenges of the moment. This is a challenging period that just keeps giving.
Doesn't it just? Yeah.
But anyway, there we are. So we suffer all the same issues as the rest of the sector. But we're doing our best to battle through them.
Yeah. I think there's many reasons why I was excited to have a chat with you today, but also because you guys are continuing to move forward in the face of everything that's going out there. It's almost a little moment of solace for people out there to hear that progress can still be made.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret the different directions of headwinds that we face at the moment, and whether it's energy, whether it's general costs, whether it's skill shortage, whether it's Brexit hangover, COVID hangover. I mean, all of that is still it was a tricky business before all of that to get right. And as you know, it's a business of many moving parts. And then you add layers of those sort of challenges onto the top, and it's been really wearing over since 2020 for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that today. This is all
No.
about you.
Let's get upbeat and no. So anyway, we're super pleased to have secured two fantastic new sites actually. One in Warwickshire, so that'll be our furthest north we've drifted. So it's
you got a nosebleed.
yeah. It's I check my passport every time I get north of Oxford, but but we've found a great location just close to Stratford upon Avon in Warwickshire, which we think is a fertile hunting ground for us. And the second one actually on the Kent East Sussex border near Tunbridge Wells, which is another amazing property. So we see a lot of properties either on the desk or physically. We're introduced to a lot of sites because people know we're still looking to grow. But you kiss a lot of frogs in this game. You before you settle on something. So I bet I've reviewed 200 sites to
really right
to whittle down to two.
Wow.
But we're very proud of the quality of our portfolio, and we wouldn't ever want to dilute that in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, we'll get into that in a bit more depth later on, I think. But what I'm really keen to understand is your journey to this point, because you don't just wake up and become. Actually, I didn't mention at the beginning. I don't think I even called you an OBE. You don't just wake up with these things, do you? There's a journey to get there. So take us all the way back to the beginning of your career. How did you get into hotels in the first place?
Kind of by mistake. So often,
this is always the way.
So often these things kind of run that kind of course. The true story is that when I was at school, we lived in London. I'm a Londoner. We lived in London, and we moved out to Surrey when I was 14 years old, and I had been at an all boys school in New Cross in London, and I moved to a mixed school when I was 14 years old. And despite reasonably promising academic credentials up until then, I kind of got distracted with all these the young ladies that were running around as well. So instead of doing any work for my O levels, and I should have, I think I was supposed to get 10 O levels, I didn't do any work, but I had a load of fun.
Right. And, you were destined for this industry then.
Yeah,
the fun element, not the work, I should say.
So I ended up with 3 O levels, 2 English and art. That was my total sort of clutch of academic qualifications at the age of 16. So I wasn't invited to go to the sixth form, to attend the sixth forms. And I think my mother was pulling her hair out and was thinking, what on earth are we going to do with this boy, really?
Right.
And I always enjoyed messing around in the kitchen. She was a very good home cook, as was her mother. And I always enjoyed messing around in the kitchen. And she suggested, why don't you look at becoming a chef? I looked at the course curriculum, the course prospectus, and the next course up the page from chef was hotel and catering operations. This was at Brooklands Technical College in Weybridge. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite good. Not really understanding, a thing about what it was really, but it involved a little bit of cooking and other aspects. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite good. I'll go and do that. And so at the age of 16, I drifted into the world of hospitality.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? At that age, especially when you probably at this point in time, you don't really have a clue what you want to do, right?
Oh, no,
it just sounds quite interesting. So I'll maybe give that a crack.
And I think, to be honest, we're talking, what are we talking, mid-70s or something. At that time, you really can't process the information of what that career might look like in 40 or 50 years' time. That's just too obscure to even contemplate. So pure luck, really. I mean, had my mother said, "Oh, you like messing around with old cars," I'd have probably become a motor mechanic. I mean, it was just so all credit to her, really. And of course, once I got to college, it completely suited my personality, and I do enjoy sort of practical things, and so it was partly working with my hands and those senses, and partly some sort of academic study, but not too heavy on the academic study, which again suited me. So I did quite well at college, bizarrely. So I'd obviously I found something that was which suited me, and from there I got taken on as a management trainee with the Savoy company in London, and so that was the kind of the break. And at that time, people leaving the sort of the college courses that I'd done, it was an OND I did, which is now a BTEC or whatever it is. People leaving those sort of college courses would end up with Trust House Forte or the Hilton Group or whatever. Yeah. Cream of the crop was the Savoy Management Training Scheme, and in those days, that the Savoy Group consisted of the Savoy Hotel in the Strand, Claridge's in Mayfair, and the Connaught and the Berkeley, a couple of restaurants, and a hotel in Paris called the Lancaster. And this was considered, the kind of premiership of hotel training schemes. And yeah, my first posting was as a waiter at Claridge's. I say waiter. I ran around with a big tray for 6 months.
I've had a couple of people on actually who've at some point in their life have been through the Savoy management training, and some of the stories are incredible in terms of the attention to detail that you are kind of subjected to. With one guy said that he wasn't on a chef program, but he was saying that at one point he had to go and chop up a bucket full of button mushrooms and turn them into roses using a cleaver. I remember thinking, what? God.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was, it was, I don't know what era that was, but that's probably sounds like a similar kind of era. But yeah, I mean, it was very, very traditional, old school practices, both front and back of house. And, at the time, I don't think we really realized what was happening. We were just, lots of junks, we were just having a good time, and we were working super hard. I mean, the shock to the system at the age of 18, when I started at Claridge's, we worked 6 days a week as standard. It was a 6-day a week contract, and they were split shifts every day. So you'd start at, I don't know, 10 till 3, and then you'd be back at 5:30 till 11 o'clock. And you did that every day.
Yeah.
All for my first pay packet was, well, for the time I was at Claridge's, it was £21 a week. So
right. Well, inflation's probably taken up a little bit.
A little bit, but it wasn't. You weren't rich for the, So the kind of well-worn old adages of long hours and low pay, that was definitely the case then. Right. And happily, those days are behind us. But yeah, I definitely had a bit of that.
But I suppose as well there's an element, as you say, you're in the moment. At this point, are you beginning to see a path in any way, shape, or form, or is it a case of, look, I'm just enjoying this and I'll just see where it takes me?
Yeah, I think it was the latter, to be absolutely honest. I mean, I was learning a lot, and really fantastic practical skills, many of them life skills, actually. I mean, just, I don't know. My second posting after Claridge's was, they had a restaurant then called Stone's Chop House, which was rather like Simpson's in the Strand. It was an old, a very old school English grill type restaurant. that was my the first time I bumped into sort of good wine, and I learned to make cocktails, and these are all just amazing life skills, regardless of anything else. So
yeah,
at the age of 19, I could make 20 or 30 cocktails without even looking at a book and, kind of understanding what I was doing really. And so, that's a nice thing to do, isn't it?
Well, if you're hosting a little party at your house and you can do that, it's an impressive thing to do, isn't it?
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of fun. And as I say, there are a lot of mainly, a lot of youngsters from every nationality I was bumping into. And yeah, it was great. It was and it's like being a student in London, really. I mean, and all my mates were students, and many of them in London, and yeah. So I felt the same. It's just mine was kind of a practical work and learning period, whilst theirs was perhaps more academic.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened next? Where did you?
So I went through all those various, kind of through the various hotels and departments. They tended to sort of put you into a new department every 6 months or a year. And so, eventually you work your way around the hotel. I ended up, and they liked to send you to abroad. So I ended up, they had an arrangement with the Crillon in Paris, which is an amazing hotel on Place de Concorde. Right? So I went there for a year, and I was 20 years old, went there for a year. And I'd been at the Berkeley prior to that, and I was invited to go back to the Berkeley for my first sort of junior management position, which was an assistant reception manager. And I was 21 years old. I was really young. And then the reception manager left, and so I found myself at the age of 23, and I was reception manager of the Berkeley Hotel in London, which was, it was just amazing. I was strutting around in tails and pinstripes. I thought I was the dog's bollocks, honestly. And I was looking after all the reservations and so on. And so, I had, I always say I had Dustin Hoffman on speed dial. I did, and Diana Ross would call me, and I'd check in the Aga Khan, and I'd see the Queen Mother, and I don't know. I mean, it just went on and on and on. It was like a A-list who's who, and so super exciting times, really.
And as well, I suppose the fact that you I suppose lucky in a way that this happened, and you were but that's kind of the industry, right? I mean, that happens all the time.
It happens all the time, and I'm a great believer. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I was definitely working hard, and I was definitely getting the breaks and getting lucky. But I was always there on time for work, and it didn't matter if I'd been out half the night or whatever. And all of that jazz. So there was a reasonable discipline about how I was going about things, although I didn't really recognize or process that really at the time. But looking back on it, that was certainly true. And I was gathering, heaps of knowledge and probably a lot of confidence as well, and and an ability to, I think one of the key things about being a hotelier, and it today as much as any time in the past, you need to be able to communicate effectively, no matter who you're talking to, whether you're talking to somebody who is working with you, at the bottom of the ladder, if you like, of the scale, or you're talking to clientele that perhaps are famous or wealthy or exotic or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And the ability to communicate at every single level there and in between, I think, is a key skill of a hotelier. And so I was starting to build that background of knowledge and skill set, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, great times. So I met my wife Judy during that period, and eventually, after I'd been back at the Berkeley for 5 years, so I was about 26, I think, and I'd already had 5 years experience as front of house manager or assistant, at the Berkeley, which is pretty amazing. And we decided we got married, and we decided that was the time to travel. So to use the hotel sector as something we could travel with, and I had this bee in my bonnet about I wanted to work on an island, in the sun somewhere, and we went to Bermuda for 2 years. So
nice.
So I ended up at a larger, much more commercial sort of bed factory resort, really, 300 bedroom, which isn't large now, but at the time, it was a sort of larger entity, but very commercial, dealing with East Coast Americans, and super challenging at times, very difficult role. But it was brilliant experience, and whilst we were out there, we were 2 years there, and our first son was born, Ollie, so we were growing as a couple, a family, and career, and it was all sort of heading in a fairly logical direction, really.
Yeah, sunshine baby.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's still very proud of the fact he's got born in Bermuda in his passport. He thinks that's quite cool.
Well, absolutely. Great. And so you're kind of, as you quite rightly said, you're climbing the ranks naturally at this point. I suppose it's almost a career that we can see in a lot of people, just that natural step.
Yeah, and I think natural step. That's it. It's embracing the opportunities as they arose, and not doing anything too wacky, along the path, and it's something we do, but by today's, there's an impatience about today's younger team members, that they do 6 months somewhere, and they think they can run the show, and many of them are very able, and many of them can run the show, but the depth of training that we were going through before we really got into positions was quite fulsome. And I think sometimes that perhaps is overlooked in today's market, because we're short of skills, people get promoted too early, and so on. But although I was young, I'd sort of done the hard yards really before. So when we came back from Bermuda, my work permit came to an end after 2 years, and I was offered 2 jobs basically. So I was offered to go deeper into the Caribbean, to go to Antigua. The then de Savoy-owned St. James's Club was opening a whole bunch of villas, and so I was offered that job, and then at the same time I was offered an amazing job, really, and it's kind of a defining moment. A general manager at the Chewton Glen Hotel, and I was, like I say, I was about, I don't know, maybe I was 27 or 8 at this stage, but at that time,
wow, yeah.
At that time, it was an iconic. Still is an iconic. Actually, they're called iconic hotels.
They are, yeah, yeah. They've put their money where their mouth is there, for sure.
But yeah, so to be offered that sort of plum job at the time, in those days there were, a handful of really great hotels outside London, and that was one of them. And so to nail that job at that age was an extraordinary opportunity. Yeah,
without question. It's the old if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? But I had a conversation with lots of different people who've gone on to great things on this podcast, and a lot of them set goals quite early on, as in, like, I want to be a general manager before I'm 30 and all of that sort of stuff. I get the sense that wasn't you. You were kind of almost taking each opportunity as it came to you.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Certainly up until that point. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think because and this is where the messing up at school really worked in my favor, because I was by the age of what, 26, I've got 10 years under my belt.
Yeah.
And so that was, that worked in my favor, actually. So I guess yeah, as you say, age was overlooked slightly because there was a reasonable depth of experience at that point. And so I stayed at Chewton Glen through really interesting times. We developed the hotel from a 40 bedroom to a 60 bedroom. We added one of the first fully all singing and dancing spas in the country. We built a golf course. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things that we were doing, and I was right in the breach of that. And so that was amazing experience. So yeah, as I was saying, but 8 years doing that, and I was mid-30s, and so by that stage, of course, I thought I could do my own thing, and that's really where my entrepreneurial career started.
Right. Yeah, because I suppose 8 years at that particular property, through that particular time, as you say, where you're it's going through an evolution and a development of what's possible with the property.
Yeah.
Definitely a role, I think, at that age that you could not have said no to, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. No, I mean, when we were deciding between Antigua or the New Forest, it was, we were sitting, we talk about it even now, that we sat on the hotel I was at in Bermuda was called Elbow Beach Hotel. It's a beautiful beach. And we sat on the beach, and we got the young baby, Ollie, with us. And we were kind of, Antigua, New Forest, and, whilst we quite fancied the Antigua bit, a little bit more sunshine, we knew that the sensible thing and the career move was really Chewton Glen, and so that's what brought us to Hampshire, and we've been here ever since.
yeah. Well, it's not a bad place, is it? Really? Yeah, you've built a hotel empire there, but we'll come on to that in any case. So your 8 years at Chewton Glen, was there a point where you started to get itchy feet, in the sense that you felt that I've got a clear indication of who I am as a hotelier and what I want to go and do, and perhaps now I'm outgrowing what I can do as a general manager?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it in one there, really. It was a really fascinating period. That was the infamous period in the early 90s when interest rates went up to 20% overnight and all that business, and we'd just borrowed a shitload to develop the spa and all these extra rooms and everything. So it was my first, although there was Martin Scan was the owner in those days. And so although ultimately, it was his business, I was involved every step of the way, and certainly the projects were very much under my remit and so on. So living through that, I mean, again, there's nothing like that sort of experience when it comes to, the things we've had to face in more recent times. So that was, during that period, we had Gulf wars and we had exchange rate dramas. We had this interest rate issue. The Americans, we relied quite heavily on American tourists at that point, and any slight global economic situation or geopolitical situation kind of sent wobbles through the American market, and one year you've got 25% Americans, and next year you haven't got any, and that sort of thing. So this was all really kind of really useful experience to draw on later on.
Yeah.
But also the other thing that was really happening at that time was that the birth of a more modern approach to hospitality was starting in London. So, at that time, every country house hotel was crisp white linen and jackets and ties required for dinner, and, all of that jazz. We were a Michelin-starred restaurant. We lost and won a Michelin star, and all, so this is all great stuff, to get through.
Yeah, it's all experience again, right? I mean, the highs and the lows.
The highs and the lows, yeah.
Yeah.
And this evolution in the food scene in particular in London had started. And I found myself upholding upholding rules and regulations that I didn't really still believe in. So I was just insisting people wore a jacket for dinner, And I thought, why? I don't really, and we couldn't quite get to a point where Martin, the proprietor, and I kind of agreed on that. And there are all sorts of rules and regulations around what you could and couldn't do at Chewton Glen. And for all good traditional reasons, that's the way it had been up until then. But in London, really, there were a few pioneers for a more modern way of doing things. So Conran, of course, with the two or three sort of iconic restaurants at that moment that were starting to do differently were Quaglino's, Mezzo, Anthony Worrell Thompson's 190 Queensgate, Alistair Little. These guys were starting to peddle a simpler and, in my view, more relevant food philosophy and dining experience. So, and they were not stuffy about what you should wear, and the food on the plate was not arranged within an inch of its life, and all of that.
Yeah.
So this was a revolution that was happening, but there was nothing like that happening in the sticks. It was still very, very traditional. And so coupled with that I was observing, and the fact I'd already done 8 years, and I was then thinking, well, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Am I going to continue to be a general manager for the rest of my life, or what?
Yeah, that's usually the question that people ask themselves when they hit their 40s, isn't it? Is this it? Is this what I'm doing? But you got there sort of 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier.
So that was buzzing around in my head, and I hadn't formulated my escape really from that world, but I knew there was some discomfort about how that was continuing at that time.
A very quick word, if you'll permit me. Providing great customer service is all about having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where our sponsor RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud makes managing your team's rotas, attendance and annual leave easy. With its simple drag and drop planner, you'll be creating rotas for your team in minutes, while its built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. One RotaCloud customer actually reported that they'd gone from spending 25% on their monthly turnover on wages to spending just 19%, all thanks to RotaCloud's intuitive rota planning software. So do your business a favour and head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to start your 30-day free trial and find out how much easier organising your team can be. Now let's get back to it.
During my period at Chewton Glen, I had recruited. When I went there was no such thing as a sommelier there, and so I recruited Gerard Basset as our sommelier, and we'd developed a friendship through wine, and I'd kind of honed my wine interest really with Gerard. And to cut quite a long story short, we went to a wine tasting together in London at doesn't exist anymore, but at Bibendum in Primrose Hill. Amazing wine tasting, and at lunchtime, the directors we were with, they picked up a few bottles from the table, and we walked down the road to the pub, which was the Lansdowne in Primrose Hill, and this was the first gastropub, or within the first 3 gastropubs, and this was evidence of, for me, of what was happening. So we walked in there with our half-drunk bottles of wine, and the pub was unrecognizable to any traditional pub that existed in the UK then. It was very relaxed, and the food was, interesting. It wasn't a long menu, but I remember to this day what I had. I had a goat's cheese salad with red peppers on it. And this was like, something that just had never been seen before, really. And so this very relaxed, foodie pub operation. Pubs didn't serve that sort of food. They'd serve sausage and chips if you were lucky, but that was it. So we sat down in a very relaxed style. We'd taken our wine. There was battered old sofas there and all this sort of thing. And I thought, this is just genius. This is brilliant. And on the way back on the train, and we'd been wine tasting, so we'd obviously had a few glasses.
Well, the ideas would be flowing at that point.
Probably. The ideas were flowing. And I said to Gerard, what are you going to do next? And he said, I'm going I think I'm going to go to California and write about wine. And by this stage, he'd
That's lovely.
won UK Sommelier of the Year, European Sommelier of the Year. He was going for his, World Sommelier title and all that. Anyway, a week later, I called him and I said, you said you were going to go to California. Would you consider, if I was going to do something around wine and hospitality, would you, is that of interest? And so we sat down and I loosely scribbled on the front of this folder, Hotel du Vin. And it was, because he was French and, and it was wine. And the idea was to have a sort of townhouse hotel with a wine school, really. That's where it started.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, we didn't have any money and we had to raise a lot, sounds easy, but it was quite difficult raising money for, when you've got no track record as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about that. I don't know how much of this is cloak and dagger, but in the sense of, for anybody out there who's listening who has their own eyes on something that they'd like to do, because actually one of the things that I love about what you said in that part of your journey at Chewton Glen is that you just started almost asking yourself the question, why? Why does it have to be this way? Why? And that's it's a simple but powerful question when you're trying to, I don't know, start a revolution, really, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as we were formulating the idea for Hotel du Vin, what became Hotel du Vin, my thoughts were, provincial hotels at that stage, as I say, were very trad. They were dominated, every provincial town in the country, had a sort of coaching inn of some sort, and they were usually run by Trusthouse Forte, and, the love had gone out of that business some time before. And so they were sort of peddling a traditional operation, but executing it badly. So it wasn't like the Savoy or Claridge's where they had the skill set to actually deliver that sort of traditional service. This was just a badly executed, watered down version of traditional service and food that was just pretty bloody awful. Yeah. But these places were still filling. And I thought, well, and at that time, the room rate typically was 100 quid a night. So the whole premise behind Hotel du Vin was, if there's a market for something bad at £100 a night, if we do it slightly better and more relevant, maybe there's a good market for that. And so, we were the first to put, everyone was sleeping under duvets at that time in their homes, but hotels were still using sheets and blankets. We were the first to put duvets on our beds. We were the first to put fresh milk in the mini bars. And I'm still amazed to this day. So many places you go and you get those horrible little plastic pots of, which apart from being a terrible sustainable option, are just inconvenient and pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But this is in 1994. We opened the first Hotel du Vin, so this is nearly 30 years ago, and you're still bumping into the same issues now.
Yeah.
So there was sort of a few things bedroom wise. It was duvets, it was fresh meat, it was a monsoon shower. We started to work out that if you got 3 bar of pressure through your shower head, you get a decent shower. And even now that, and I understand the sustainability issues around this now, in terms of water usage, but the trickle of showers that were up and down the country in particularly in provincial hotels were pathetic at that time. So it's these sort of things. It was we were looking at it slightly differently, and then of course the restaurant we had one eye on what was going on in London in these sort of the gastro pubs, the Conran restaurants and all this sort of thing, and so we replicated a version of that, and we opened the first Hotel du Vin, not realizing we were right at the vanguard of a boutique hotel movement, and we were just trying to do our thing and get one property up and running, and it was pretty difficult to raise the money, and we certainly had no money of our own, so we were borrowing, and our first bank loan, it was interest rates, people talk about high interest rates now. Our first bank loan for $750,000 was at 12.5%.
Oof, jeez.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So is that how you were able to was it was institutional learning and anything that you could kind of beg, borrow, steal, cobble together?
Yeah, we put together a raft of investors, of just sort of contacts and people we knew and so on, and that we managed to raise £500,000 that way. We put $750,000 of bank debt on it from Royal Bank of Scotland, and then we still didn't quite have enough money, and so we came up with the wheeze of having our rooms sponsored by wine houses. And so we charged wine houses to have their name on the door, which was a great wheeze, actually. So we raised another, I don't know, I think it was 60 grand or something at the time. And so that was our working capital, really. So it's stock the cellar and
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur, though, isn't it? Is that you can get creative in how do we pay for stuff?
Yeah, and we kept the staffing to. I mean, Gerard or I would spend all day on the floor of the restaurant, and then we couldn't afford a night porter, so one of us would sleep on the sofa in the lounge and keep an eye on the place overnight, and then the next one would take over the next day, and so you never slept properly on the sofa. So effectively, you were working 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
For a while.
But that's also the life of an entrepreneur, though, isn't it? Especially in the early days when you've got to, I suppose, get it off the ground, ensure that it works, ensure that people are coming and using it. There's all manner of hats that you need to have in that approach to covering off all of these things.
Certainly, and actually, the other element I missed was that Judy was the real hero or heroine. She was. Because when it came to the bank loan, and I really struggled to put the finance package together. I'd talked to an awful lot of people, and people talk about investing, and then of course there's a big difference between people saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do something," and then those that actually write the check. But anyway, we finally put together a reasonable amount. But actually, when it came to the bank loan, I had to provide a guarantee for the bank loan, and so we put our house on the line for the guarantee, and we had nothing in reserve at all. I'd maxed out the credit cards and all of that, and I'd borrowed a bit of cash from my parents, but they weren't wealthy people, so that was we'd used every resource. But for Judy to agree to have the house as a guarantee for the business showed some mettle, I thought. And and when today even today, a lot of people say to me, "Oh yeah, I really like to start my own business," and they come and talk to me, and I say, "Okay, so what do you have any money? Do you have any? Do you have a house? Oh yeah, but I'm not and so
what are you prepared to do?"
So you have to, and that's that's it, isn't it? I mean, yes, it came right for us, and we're very lucky with the way it's all turned out, but we didn't shy away from that sort of tough stuff either.
Yeah, and it's a proper sliding doors moment as well, right? I mean, that doesn't happen. We're having a different conversation. Let's put it that way.
No, exactly. It's very much that, and so there's always a few light bulb moments and a few sliding door moments that kind of define things as you go along. And the next one really was, there was a very, very influential food writer at the time, Jonathan Meades, who wrote for the Times, and so he was the Giles Corran equivalent, or the Fay Masher. I mean, Fay was around even then, but he was the man really that everyone followed. And about a month after we opened, he came to the restaurant and wrote the perfect article. He didn't say that we were the best restaurant in the country. What he said was, this is the future, and these guys are doing it right, and it's. We've had many column inches written about us over the years, but I mean, that's the one that that actually made the difference, and he had the power in those days, to close restaurants.
Right. Yeah. Make or break.
Yeah. So that was a really important moment, and where he raved about somewhere, others sort of followed. So it was a really good that was a really good kickstart to the business.
Yeah. So foundations seem to be set at this point in time with that kind of level of coverage, and so I suppose proof of concept. It's working.
Yeah.
How did it develop out from there?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when we opened Hotel de Van in Winchester, which is about 200 meters from where I'm sitting now, actually.
Right. Still keeping an eye on it.
Actually, I haven't been in there for years. But yeah, so we got that open, and it was starting to do well, and we started thinking about whether we could do the same thing in other places, and there were many versions of the shareholder group and people coming in and one thing and another, and we opened our second hotel in 96 in Tunbridge Wells, and then thereafter we did 7 in 10 years. So we ended up selling Hotel de Van exactly 10 years to the day after we started it, because we got a great offer, and it was we'd had a good run with it, and so on. And alongside that, I'd been a director of Soho House for most of that period as well, and then Nick asked me to become chairman of Soho House once we'd sold Hotel de Van. So.
Yeah, well, how did that come about? How did the directorship there come about? Whilst you've also got your head in that business.
Well, yeah, again, it's another moment, and Nick Jones remains to this day one of my best mates, and absolutely one of my best mates within the industry. But in about 95, he had just opened the very first Soho House in Greek Street in London, and some of his members had said to him, "Wouldn't it be great to have a country place, a country hotel, country club to go to?" So he started looking around at what was out there, and someone said to him, "You should go and have a look at Hotel de Van. They seem to be doing something interesting." Because I've explained the rest of the scene was very trad. Anyway, Nick called me and said, "Can I come and have lunch with you in Winchester?" And so he came down and started asking me loads of questions. And to be honest, I said to him, "Look, why don't you go back to London and look after your lovies in Soho, because it's really the rural hotel business, is really hard, and I'm not convinced, and all the rest of it." Anyway, 3 months later, he called me back and he said, "Do you remember me? I came to talk to you." And he said, "I ignored all of your advice, and I bought something called Babington House. But," he said, "you were the only person in all my sort of research not to blow smoke up my arse about the idea, and sow a note of caution.
Yeah.
So would you like to join the board?" And so that was that was
very cool.
95, and
truth wins, eh? Truth wins every time.
Maybe. And and then I was involved with Soho House for about 14 years. So from then through to right through to after we sold Hotel de Van, I was chairman for about 3 years, really working on the initial expansion into America. And so I spent a lot of time in the States. And then ultimately we sold the majority stake to Richard Caring in about 2008 or something. So I sort of sold myself out of a job, really.
Right. Yeah, but what at this point in time, is there any part of your being that's thinking, right, I need to have a rest? Because it sounds like it's been quite a full-on period up to this point. But equally, I suppose, from the sounds of it, you're doing something that you absolutely just love to do.
Yeah, and the answer is no. There wasn't a rest, and to this day, I don't think there's ever been a period of my life that I've not worked for more than 3 or 4 weeks. So even between jobs and everything, it's so. I do. I obviously I like the work.
Yeah.
But it appeals to my creative part of my head. Yeah, there's always something new, and I love the cut and thrust, and the chase and all the rest of it. So
yeah.
So yeah, I was involved with Nick for all that time, and then I was sort of project managing Soho Beach House in Miami for him when we sold the majority stake to Richard Caring. And as I say, so I sort of left at that point, and around that time, I got a call from Jim Ratcliffe, who our kids went to school together in Southampton, actually. And so my youngest, Will, was good friends with his youngest, George. And anyway, I get a call from Jim and saying, we've started building this hotel in the New Forest. It was then called Park Hill. And it was supposed to have a budget of 20 million, and it's now 40 million. And I don't think we know how to open it. Would you come and give us a hand? Or come and have a look at it? And I wasn't really looking to, I'd made a little bit of money from Hotel de Van and Soho House, and I don't know. I thought at that stage I'd pick up a few directorships or something and amble along.
It doesn't sound like you're an ambler, Robin.
Yeah. Anyway, so I went to have a look at then Park Hill, and it was an incredible building, incredible location. I knew the original donor hotel that it was, and they'd spent a lot of money on it, not all of it particularly wisely, but it had been done to a great level of quality. And I said, yeah, I think I can. I knew that it was right in the middle of the New Forest, so obviously that was my patch. I knew what was what down there, and so I got involved. And eventually, we changed the name to Limewood, and we got Limewood open in 2009, I think, something like that, which opened to good critical acclaim and has done very well ever since. And whilst looking at the Limewood, looking at that property, there were a bunch of other small enterprises that were within that portfolio, which I was tidying up. There was a loss-making restaurant which I closed. There was a half-finished restaurant in Southampton which was badly conceived, so I stopped work on that. There was a wholesale meat business which I closed as well. Anyway, I was left with a small hotel in Brockenhurst that I had valued to sell. It was called Whitley Ridge Hotel, and the valuation came back really, really low because it was loss making and it was a bit of a mess. And it was valued at £1 million. And I thought, hang on, this is quite a nice lump of property for £1 million, it seems. So I said to Jim, look, I tell you what. Oh, I'd been walking around the property and it had a nice kitchen garden. That's right. So that was another light bulb moment. And I said to Jim, look, it's only valued at £1 million. I'll buy half of it and let's see if we can do something with it. And that was the birth of the pig. Right?
Right. Yeah. So some more light bulb moments just from, and I guess as well at this point in time, the world is starting to pay more attention to sustainability and the provenance of goods and all of that sort of stuff. So again, your light bulb moments seem to come at the right moment in time.
Yeah, I've been asked about this before and sort of, I don't know, spotting trends or whatever, but I think if anything, I do sort of understand the sort of zeitgeist of the moment, really, and trying to use that to some effect, I suppose. But I've always wanted I hate the idea of themes and concepts, because I like to think about integrity about what we do, but all of our themes and concepts have had genuine roots to them. So Hotel du Van, you can't put the name of Hotel du Van over the door and expect it to be taken seriously unless you have proper wine expertise and within the building, and certainly Gerard had that in spades. And likewise for the pig, I wanted to have this agricultural sort of connotation, and that to be the clue for everything we did. And so the kitchen garden provided that. So yeah, these are they're concepts, but with a considerable level of integrity behind them.
Yeah. And I guess as well, you have, it's one thing to come up with the concept, but you can't deliver the concept without having the right people around you to pull it off, right? It's, you obviously are somebody who cares deeply about the industry and kind of everything that comes with it. But at the same time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably not the guy who's going to develop the garden kitchen into something that's usable into the restaurant. You're going to need to bring in somebody who kind of can do that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As with any operation, any business, anything, you need to find the people with the right skills. And as it happens, the kitchen garden sorted itself out. My eldest son had been to agricultural college, was a very outdoor kid. He thought he wanted to be a tree surgeon until he got halfway up a tree and, kind of felt quite uncomfortable about it. He was looking for work, and he ended up, when we were building the pig, sort of humping and dumping furniture for us, ended up somehow drifting into the kitchen garden. I didn't even know he was doing work in the kitchen garden. The then general manager put him in there to dig over some beds, I think, or something. And before I knew it, he'd been offered a job as kitchen gardener. And then we got him a mentor for about a year. And no, actually a bit longer, probably. Yeah. But, he's super knowledgeable and so on. And now he's the architect of all the kitchen gardens, and he's got a team of 35 kitchen gardeners and runs the nursery and bloody blah. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love how stuff kind of happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's serendipity.
That's history repeating itself, really. In his case, sort of chip off the old block, maybe. Just slightly fell into it.
Yeah. So you're obviously, as a brand, you're developing further, and your reputation is immense, both internally within the industry and externally. I mean, I can't speak to people that I know who don't work in hospitality, and one of the first names that they say, "Oh, do you know the pig?" I think, well, of course, everybody knows the pig. So how do you go from a concept like that you have in your head as you're walking around the grounds to developing a brand which is such a positive thought to people, and a brand that kind of just associates itself with good and great? How does that happen?
Again, I talked about integrity, and I think when you're opening anything or developing the idea of something, total immersion, of the the principles behind that, it's a sort of total immersion strategy, really. So, when I'm starting something, I'm living and breathing, and it's coursing through my veins for months ahead. And so when I hear of somebody saying, sort of drifting into something without putting their life and soul into it, I know it's, almost certainly going to fail, because it's not ever just about a property or money, or, it's about, really feeling the nerve center of that, of that operation. Difficult to describe, really, but, every single detail. And, one of my favorite phrases is, this business isn't complicated, it's just a million details. And it is, that's what it is. It's a collection of details that you put together and weave together. And, you look at any tabletop in any restaurant, there are 100 decisions that have happened on that tabletop.
Yeah.
Just to get that tabletop to sit there in front of somebody. This goes over most people's heads, but it's the combination of all those details as you weave them together that you end up with your final offering to the guest or customer. So yeah, it is just this totally. I mean, and if you were a fly on the wall with some of the ridiculous, detailed conversations we have about the smallest, element, which in isolation seems so pathetic and so trivial, but it's just another piece of the jigsaw, So yeah, it's putting that jigsaw together, I guess.
Yeah. And I suppose that's something that's actually really, really fascinating to do when
Yeah,
you
fascinating. It's brilliant, and I mean, it's why, my wife Judy and I, we never turn off from it. We'll be in some far-flung place around the world, and we'll see something and say, wouldn't that be brilliant, if we use that in some way here or there, So continually looking, continually eyes open. And, even yesterday I was with the team at Limewood, and I'd noticed something that was irritating me. And, I was encouraging quite senior managers to use their eyes more, and just don't just look, but actually see things, and make a judgment call about it, and rightly or wrongly, just kind of don't just walk past something.
Yeah. Well, that's the old saying, isn't it? The standard you accept is the standard you walk past, or something along those lines. Yeah, and I remember, and you've sparked a memory actually, at the very first time that I worked in food and beverage on a cruise ship, and my mentor, who was the director of F&B equivalent on what today would be on a ship, did a walk round all the bars and restaurants with me, and basically we went into every room, and he just said, right, talk to me about the room. And initially that conversation is 30 seconds long because I don't know what I'm talking about. And by the end of the 15 outlets that we've been around, we're having 10-minute conversations about places. And somebody once said, I can't even remember who said this to me, but it's such a wonderful phrase. Once you've learned attention to detail, you can't unlearn it.
That's right. It's absolutely right.
Yeah. And
I think, going back to where we started this conversation and Claridge's and all that sort of jazz, I think, I was very lucky to have that drummed into me at a very early part of my career. And it's, it's absolutely still, still with me. I mean, literally one of the things I was talking about yesterday was on a menu. It was on our spa menu at Limewood, where they have put in some of they put in the nutrients, on menu items, because of the spa element. And sulfites were mentioned, and on two of the dishes, it said sulfite and not sulfites. And so I said, well, these two dishes only got one sulfite in, and they, I mean, what are you talking about? And it was just sloppy, and it,
yeah. And some people will listen to you and go, oh, come on. But, if you actually want to get ahead and be true to yourself and what you stand for as a brand, these things are massively important.
Oh, yeah. And, I say to them all the time that, if you don't want to bother with this detail, there's loads of really average hotels out there you can go and work in, because, fine. That's up to you. That's your choice.
Yeah.
But if you're proud about where you work, and, this is what makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I'm eminently conscious of time, but before we go, do you have any funny stories from your career that you can share?
Oh my word. Funny stories.
Where to start, probably.
Yeah, I need to, there's too many to. I was talking yesterday about when we first opened Hotel de Van. Actually, there was, we like I say, we had a really, we were on an absolute shoestring and a real sort of minimal staff, and we used to survive on students coming to work for us and everything. And anyway, we had a really charming, pretty girl that came and worked with us, and we were delighted to have her because, she brought light to the room, but she was really clumsy, and her job was polishing glasses. One of her jobs was polishing glasses at the end of the evening. But we realized that despite her very obvious attributes as a personality in the room, we couldn't afford to keep her, because for every 3 glasses she polished, she broke 2 of them by twisting the bottom off. So she had to be sacked for actually, we couldn't afford to keep her. She was, so I was telling someone that story yesterday, and then I think it was the same girl who she sort of wasn't the brightest button in the box really, and we gave her tasks, and she was told to, when people arrive, ask to take their coats, and we were watching her one day and thought, what on earth is she doing? So people walking in without a coat, and she was asking to take their coats. So yeah,
yes.
I mean look, there's plenty of stories. I need a little more time to think about them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's many a book you could probably write, probably compendium of stories from what has been quite an enviable career. I think a lot of people look to you as a shining light of the industry, and I think that's absolutely right and true. What you've achieved from, if you don't mind me saying, very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And also, zero qualifications, as it were. What greater qualification do you need than actually just going out and grafting?
Yeah, no, I think, it's for some people, I mean, look, we have great people that come to work for us with very impressive qualifications, and we have great people that come to work for us with zero. And and I would always want that whole mix within our team, because everyone brings something.
Yeah, absolutely. What three reasons would you give to somebody who or why should somebody come and work in hospitality?
No 2 days are ever the same. There's countless opportunities, and there's the opportunity to rise up through the ranks quickly if you get your head down and seize the moment, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it sounds like you've had a blast along the way, and dropping in people like Nick Jones as your best mate and stuff like that as well. It's, look at what you can do in this industry. And the people you get to mix with.
I know we're very fortunate to have many household names as friends. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Robin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I massively appreciate it. I'm sure that people will take great inspiration from what you've achieved. You're clearly not done yet. There's more in life in the old dog yet. Is that the saying?
Exactly. Well, thank you for being gentle with me, and I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks, Phil.
Fantastic. Thanks, Robin. And there we have it. I think we can all agree that Robin has had an amazing career, and not done yet either. The most amazing thing for me is just how humble he has remained in the face of such incredible success. A lesson for us all there. We'll be sneaking back on your airwaves on Friday with a cheeky bonus with another legend, so until then, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you then.